Susan B. Anthony, the woman who refused to sit down and changed the nation. When the world told her to stay quiet, she spoke louder. When the law told her to sit still, she stood up. When history forgot women, Susan B. Anthony carved her name into it. She wasn't a president, general, or an inventor. She didn't have power handed to her. But what she did have was the fire of justice burning in her soul, and the kind of strength no government could silence. If you're a young person today wondering whether your voice matters, whether one person can stand up against an entire system, whether it's worth fighting for what's right when you're outnumbered, Susan B. Anthony is your answer. Who was Susan B. Anthony? Born in 1820 to a Quaker family in Massachusetts, Susan was raised to believe that every human being is equal in the eyes of God. But in the world she lived in, that wasn't true, especially for women. Women couldn't vote. They couldn't own property if they were married. They had no legal voice in their government. Most people, including many women, just accepted it. But Susan didn't. She became a teacher, then an activist. She first spoke out against slavery. Then, she turned her full focus towards women's suffrage, the right for women to vote. She was mocked, threatened, ridiculed, and arrested. At one point, she was fined $100 for illegally voting, and she refused to pay it, saying, "I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty." She never stopped. She never gave up. And though she died before seeing women win the right to vote in 1920, her courage helped pave the path that made it possible. What can you learn from Susan B. Anthony? Susan B. Anthony didn't change the world overnight. She changed it with bold words, relentless action, and unshakable belief in what's right. Here's how you can take her fire into your own life today. Stand up, even when you stand alone. Most people wait for permission. Susan didn't. She challenged a culture that told her she was less than a man, and she refused to back down. She once said, "Cautious, careful people, always casting about to preserve their reputations, can never bring about a reform." In other words, change doesn't come from the safe and silent. You don't need to wait for the world to be ready. You need to be ready to speak when it isn't. If you see injustice, speak out. If you see inequality, act, even if you're the only one at first. Use your voice. It's more powerful than you think. Susan wasn't allowed to vote, but she wrote speeches, published newspapers, and traveled to speak in front of crowds for decades. She believed that truth, spoken clearly and boldly, had the power to crack open even the hardest hearts. She said, "The day may be approaching when the whole world will recognize women as the equal of man." It seemed impossible, but she kept saying it until the world caught up. Today, your voice can reach farther than ever before. Use it, not for noise or likes, but for truth. Let your words be fire and light in a world that's forgotten how to think and feel. Expect resistance and keep going anyway. Susan was arrested for voting, denied the right to speak in Congress, called names in newspapers. She faced a wall of opposition, but she kept moving. She said, "Failure is impossible." That doesn't mean she never fell. It means she never stayed down. You will face setbacks. You'll be misunderstood, but if you know what's right, keep going. Movements aren't built in moments. They're built in perseverance. Fight not just for yourself, but for others. Susan B. Anthony wasn't just fighting for her own freedom, she was fighting for generations of women she would never meet. She partnered with others, including African American leader Frederick Douglass, to link causes of racial justice and gender equality. She believed no one is free until everyone is free. That's real leadership. It's not about getting ahead, it's about lifting others up with you. Ask yourself, who am I fighting for? Who needs my courage? What will my legacy empower? Why this matters today. Too often, People believe history is something that happens to them, not something they shape. But Susan B. Anthony proves that change begins when someone refuses to sit quietly and accept the way things are. She didn't let the culture define her role, she defined it herself and helped rewrite the constitution of an entire country. You can do the same in your school, in your community, in your country. Your life can be a megaphone for justice if you choose to use it. So don't wait for the world to give you permission. Don't wait until you're older, richer, or more qualified. Start now, be bold, be focused, be relentless. And like Susan B. Anthony, refuse to be silent.